Well, good morning, everyone. Is everyone
recording in progress?
I call this meeting to order. San Luis County Board of County Commissioners, acting in the capacity of the Board of Human Services. It is now 10:31, Tuesday, March the 15th, 2022. Commissioner Tony Hatz, would you please give us an invocation?
Lord, we thank you for another day and the much needed moisture. Lord, we ask you to be with all those in Ukraine, especially the children. Please guide them to safety and then reunite them with their families in the near future. We pray all those that suffer from war and injustice. We pray for the young and the old and the neglected ones. We ask for mercy in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Commissioner, please vote us. Yes, pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Luis Lopez.
I am here.
Commissioner Hess.
Here.
Commissioner Felix Lopez. I am here. Approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda, Mr. Caravan?
None at this time, Commissioner.
Okay. A motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second motion.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Luis Lopez.
Yes.
Commissioner Felix Lopez. Yes. Number 2, consideration of minutes. 2A, regular meeting minutes, February 15, 2022. We have those minutes with us. Do we have any questions, comments? Otherwise, do I need a motion to approve it?
Move for approval of the regular meeting minutes, February 15th, 2022.
Second.
Commissioner Luis Lopez?
Yes.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Felix Lopez? Yes. Number 3, Director's Report. Mr. Caravan.
Good morning, Commissioners. So just a few quick updates with internal of the department. One of the things that I'd like to provide to you all is acknowledgement that our phone system has been installed and is up and running today. And our big thanks to Hayden Allworth and the team at Buildings in getting us up and running. That was quite a bit of a trial and error, but we were able to get it under control. One of the main pieces of that new service, and I'll actually have Ms. Kendall refer to that a little bit later in her presentation, but we were able to modify our service menu for our auto attendant on incoming calls, and one of the best things is that now, instead of having to hang up and dial for reporting to our hotline at the state level for child welfare, we now have an external auto dial. So there's an option on our service menu that they can just press one button and send them directly to the hotline instead of having to hang up. We hope to capture more referrals in that capacity versus asking somebody to hang up and dial another number. So it's a streamlined process now to get those folks, get those children safe and secure. A couple of upcoming pieces. Our application center for income maintenance is actually installed. Ms. Garrison and our purchasing agent, Ms. Janet Trammell, have worked very diligently to get all of the items needed for that. The application center has 2 stations available to our community, which allows them to submit a peak application online. Mr. Allworth is working with us on that as well to secure the computers down to ensure that that's the only accessible piece for them. Our call center has also relocated with that application center, and those folks will be providing guidance through the peak application. They'll go through training in order to get those folks through the application easier. With that, we're also looking at installing a TTY and a TEE service, which is mandated by state and federal law. We're working on that. We've also provided some visual aids for folks who have both hearing and auditory vocal concerns. So we are trying to get ourselves into a more ADA compliant component with the services we provide at DHS. And then finally, the big one that's coming up, just to announce to the board, we're looking at tentative dates at the end of April, beginning of May for our annual leaf luncheon. Last year was our first annual, so we will be continuing that this year. We have several things in the works. Ms. Garrison and her team at LEAP have been working diligently to get that organized. So,
Are you going to have to drive through again?
No, actually, we're looking at locating it at a park this year, since we can now social gather. And because of the funding that we have, we'll be able to provide space for sitting and tables to commune and actually have some conversation. We're hoping to also have some other area agencies that provide services to the community be there so that we can provide information on additional services that we collaborate with the DHS.
So the purchase order that we have downstairs is not for that purpose?
You're going to have a stack of those, by the way. So,
I just got the first one.
yeah. So that is the purpose of that. As the board will remember, we received a $26,000 grant from the state for LEAP outreach, and that's specifically what this is. It's to thank those that use the LEAP benefits through the year, but also to get the word out regarding what LEAP does for the community.
Do you have a date set for sure, April?
We're looking at the last Friday in April, which I believe is the 29th, and if it's still a little too chilly at that point, because I know Ms. Relay keeps track on when that spending has to happen, we only have a certain timeline with the LEAP funds, and I believe it's May 31st, correct?
What is Good Friday? Just for purposes of kind of coordinating.
I believe Easter is April 17th.
Okay.
So it should already be past that day. Yeah. So again, it'll either be the 29th of April, I believe, or we looked at either the 6th or 13th of May as the dates.
And we'll get a reminder, please.
Yes, absolutely.
We can rent you the fairgrounds.
What's that?
We can rent you the fairgrounds.
That would be nice.
Well, I was thinking of Christie.
So anyways, yeah, that'll be coming up, and we anticipate, last year we anticipated, we sent out about 480 invitations. We had about 457 people come through. So we anticipate this to be a larger, so we are planning between about 700
So
and
this is
750.
by invitation only?
Yes.
Okay.
It's specifically to our lead applicants and those that have utilized the services in 2021 is who will receive that invitation.
Please keep me informed at least a couple weeks before the venue or where the venue's going to be at the day. I'd like to attend and be there in person.
Absolutely. We also plan on having a table with some of the additional services that DHS offers, and I mentioned we would love to have COP there to provide information about the services they provide to the community and some other area agencies that we work with to get that information out during the event. So I think it'll be a great kind of collaborative event to get information out regarding not just LEAP, but other services that these folks can utilize within the community.
I'm sort of thinking of the DHS choir to sing that.
I don't think any of us want to be on that. Nobody wants to hear that screeching. So I don't know, you guys might have a great voice, but I do not. So
Speaking of COS, the new director will be here taking office April 4th.
okay.
So she is right on schedule, secured the property here in the community, so it is a go. I will reach out to her and have her contact you.
Okay, perfect.
We can have her staff and probably be a great place for her to meet and greet some of your staff as well.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Outside that, Commissioners, I have nothing else to update on the director.
Let me go back real quick to the accommodative services that you were talking about.
Yes.
The hearing impaired. Who's going to be doing the outreach and the training, if you will, because a lot of this population may or may not be familiar with accessing that type of technology, which is really fantastic. I mean, that is having the accommodative services to provide the ADA compliance is going to be great, but the training and just to launch the program.
So we just went through a what they call a management evaluation with the state regarding our eligibility services. And it was just not us, all of the counties within the state were found to lack specific services in regards to how we assist those folks with needs and impairments. The state will have opportunities for training in those technologies. Realistically, we've looked at our visual impairment, so one of our stations that we've identified as an application center is established as a visually impaired center. So screen monitor has larger print, keyboard has larger print, they're color coded so that those folks with those visual impairments can actually do that more independently without us having to really, other than walk them through the application process. With the TTY and TDD service, Golden's is actually, our phone system is the one working with us to get that in place. So they would be the ones that would provide training on that component specifically, so that our call center staff would know how to do that. But essentially, that would also serve for folks who have a hearing impairment who come into the department, and we are looking at two specific things. Later in today's board meeting, you'll be presented with a contract regarding sign language services. By state and federal mandate, we are required to have those services in place. We have not had those services in place in the past, to my knowledge. And so what we are looking at is not just with the TTY, but TDD, but also if somebody requests sign language services, then we can provide that to them. Unfortunately, locally, we don't have that provides those types of services.
The college doesn't have anyone, okay.
Not that I'm aware of, no. And so we looked at specifically who the state recommends as well as other counties, and I reached out to several other counties. And so the contract you'll see later on today is the primary individual or group that they use for those services. And then in regards to those that have impairments with vocalizing their needs, we've got visual aids to assist in that. They're pretty self-guided. We looked at several options. I know Ms. Garrison's team has been putting a book together so that if somebody comes in and is unable to speak or has literacy concerns, we have a visual. We also have whiteboards for them to communicate with us if there is a vocalization concern. So we've tried to encompass all of those disabilities to ensure that we're encompassing all the services and the delivery of those services.
Thank you. Any other questions for the director? Okay. Item number 4, new business. 4, a consideration of caseload counseling activity by program.
So commissioners, today we have a little bit of a different approach. As you know, normally we come in and we give you the numbers. Those numbers are important to the programs and how we function, but some of the other areas that we've discussed with the board in the past, I think we could expand upon. And so I've asked my team to prepare some information regarding specific areas of the programs moving forward. This will be something we do month to month with the board and try to give you guys additional information on areas. It may be stuff that we've done in the past, it may be concerns that are coming down the pipe. So we just want to make sure that you all are kept abreast of the program. So I'll have Ms. Ringo come up.
Good morning.
Morning.
And I'm going to give you a handout. You may have seen this before. Updated a little bit. And this is on a single entry point. Few extra for staff, and we'll get you one.
So many people on it.
So gentlemen, you can see by this handout, Los Angeles County Department of Human Services is the single entry point to Medicaid paid services for the citizens of Los Angeles County and the citizens of Warford County. And this helps our clients access any Medicaid paid long-term care services, whether it's through the waiver services, home care loans, long-term home health services, or nursing home placements. And as you can see, our mission is not only to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. We can't always give clients what they want. Our goal is, per our assessments, to give clients what they need and to provide them with the quality services of their choice in the least restrictive and the least costly placement setting. To do this, we do have great staff to do these assessments. We look at a client's long-term care needs, specifically in the areas of bathing, dressing, toileting, mobility, eating, and a need for supervision due to behaviors or memory or cognitive issues. With that in mind, we also have to work with financial eligibility to make sure that clients are financially eligible, and we do require the client's primary care physician to send us medical information and to complete medical forms for us. With that comprehensive approach, We then move on to develop a care plan to meet the client's needs as per what the assessment is showing is needed. They can access, depending on their qualifications, any of the waivers. For example, children can access the children's HCBS waiver. They have to be at risk of nursing home or hospital care. We also have a waiver for children with life-limiting illness. That would be children who have, as certified by a physician, an illness that could be life-limiting. We also have home and community-based care services for individuals with brain injury. We also have home and community-based care services for persons with community mental health needs. We also have home and community-based care services for individuals with elderly, blind, and disabled concerns. And we also, and this is new to our area, the last one, home and community-based care services for persons with spinal cord injury. That was always limited to the Denver metro area, but as of January 1, they opened it up across the state. Unfortunately, with 3 of these waivers, we do not have any services locally for the children with life-limiting illness. But if we have a citizen in our district in need of those services, we would try to find a way to open that waiver for them. For example, it might mean they have to go to counseling or expressive therapy to help to deal with their illness. We would set that up in Denver Springs, perhaps, as they're traveling to Children's Hospital. Persons for brain injury, we don't have those services locally, but usually we can help individuals through the EBD waiver. And also with spinal cord injury, we do not have those services locally. So again, we would help them with the EBD waiver. Our services that are listed below, we do not have all of them available, such as adult day services that used to be provided by Alta Vista. It was a place where clients could go for recreational, social development. They would help them with their needs, such as if they needed help to eat while they were there. We're hoping that that one will come back to us. And actually, COVID is kind of destroying that program across the state throughout the last 2 years. We do placements at Legacy or any other assisted living facility across the state. We do transition now from nursing home placements. The state is really pushing this so that people are not just put in a nursing home and forgotten. It's very costly for the state to keep people in the nursing home. And usually people want to be in a less restricted setting, their own home with support. So we're working to try to develop that program in our district. Consumer-directed attendance support services, as you all know, is very popular in Los Angeles County, where clients can direct their own care or have a family member or an authorized rep direct their care if needed. We provide personal emergency response systems such as lifeline necklaces, bracelets. We have a variety of companies we can utilize for that. We do home modification services. However, that's been limited in our county because I know COGS have difficulty getting contractors, plumbers, and things like that to be able to help some of our residents. And occasionally we have other vendors come in and assist, but it seems like they do for a while and then they're gone. So we're trying to develop that. We have homemaker services through Alta Vista, Caring Angels, and COG. We have in-home support services. There's many agencies that provide this, such as Argos, People Care, and I believe Lorraine King is trying to develop this in Warfano County through COG. It would require that they have a nurse on site to review those cases. We do certifications for long-term home health services through Sangre de Cristo Home Health, such as when a nurse is needed to go and set up med boxes, administer maybe insulin shots to a blind diabetic because they can't do it, or set up their syringes, check their oxygen, check their vitals, give them Coumadin shots, whatever is needed. We also authorize non-medical transportation services through COG. We do nursing home assessments. We offer personal care services through Alta Vista, Caring Angels, and COG. Remote supports is a new service added to our services as of January 1st. You can see the country is now moving towards utilizing technology to assist to keep people in their homes. It might be that a person could have a fall detector and yet be able to stay in their home at night, and then if they call someone to go have one that goes off, or some kind of bracelet or device that if they're wandering, it will notify someone they've gone out of their home. So now we're seeing how we use technology to assist. Also, we can offer 30 days of respite care in a nursing home, an assisted living, or even home. And then, of course, we always provide information and referral services. And I'm very fortunate. I have a wonderful team who assists me. Thank you for your support. Thank you, Mr. Aragon, for your support. And we're just plugging away, and it's become a very complex program. I have utilized new staff for 120 days due to our subcontract, and they have to undergo extensive training. And then also now through our CS cases and our in-home support service cases, whenever we authorize a family member or someone to provide specialized care, it has to go through a review now. And so that's slowing case managers down. We have to provide a lot of documentation and support to allow those services to happen. So anyway, it had to be fast, but
No, thank you, that's great report.
Awesome. I'd like to give you a little bit of update on the COG home modification program with a new director coming in. The board of directors of the Council of Governments is focused on many entities, but especially them. That's one of the areas that has been declining, and a lot of it is exactly the contractors, but on the flip side of it, the processing of the paperwork on COG's end wasn't paying the contractors in a timely fashion. So that is why we lost some of those contractors. The contractors I spoke with really want to come back because it's decent guaranteed money. It's just it took them too long to get it. So with the new director moving in, Stephen Medina has been alerted, the board has been instructed to get this program up and going again and solidify those contractors on a regular basis. So I think that's going to be something that we will promote moving forward. And once we get the new director in place, so I'll have contact. We'll probably have a meet and greet with her and all your staff. Because everything works really well together, from the adult protective services, and the home care and all that stuff.
It does. And also too, the state does allow agencies such as COG to bill half of the costs up front to get the money to secure the materials, and then when the project is satisfactorily completed, they can bill for the remaining amount of money for that project. Thank you. Any other questions?
Lori, one quick question. You mentioned Children's Hospital. Are we getting any access to the one in Colorado Springs? Children's Hospital, is there any referrals here? I'm on that board, and I tell you one thing, every month that we meet, I'd like us to continue to provide services, because it was built with the intent to provide services for all southern Colorado. And I know they did the executive director and the president of that institution did a tour and came to San Luis County, and I just want to, if there is an opportunity, that facility is an extension of the one in Denver, and they would facilitate for the families not having to go all the way out. And then tying that in also with Council of Governments and the bus and transportation that is now in conversations, we might have an opportunity here in the near future to have families going directly from here to Colorado Springs.
And to answer that, I do know of a family here that has been utilizing the Children's Hospital Springs. Okay. So it is being a service provided here. They're also assisting in their accommodations at the Drury Inn, and I believe at the Ronald McDonald House in Springs. So they are being utilized by our residents here.
And I can reach out to them too, and I can also reach out to the Resource Exchange in Colorado Springs. Many times when hospitals have referrals, they send them to the local single entry clinic who will do a courtesy assessment for us and then send it to us. And then we follow up with the services and develop the care plan based upon services available here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Great information.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Arriaga.
Just a couple of follow-up pieces to the single entry point. One of the pieces that I'd like to touch on with the board is coming up in 2024, we will have to go out to bid on that service again. I believe it's, how many years under that bid do we have to go? Do you remember? Is it every 4 years?
I'm not quite sure.
But I do know that they will open bid and we will have to resubmit for that program to retain it as part of the DHS services.
Is that by county?
That's correct. So the state went through a redistricting process for the single entry points to, I believe, more centralized services as far as case management goes in a larger spectrum. We were fortunate enough that as a district, where from Los Angeles County was left out of the other redistricting. So we will remain as an independent district, but our services will have to go, we will have to rebid on those to keep set with us here. So that'll be coming up in 2024 with those changes. Okay, next up we have child support consent.
Morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to go ahead and give you the case counts and the collections. And I'm going to go ahead and expand on the types of cases that we have and the collections. The 4A cases, we have 314 cases. 115 of those are current, 199 are arrears only. We have 632 non-4A cases, 632 non-4A cases, a total count of 946. Our collections for the TANF, $14,621.39, and the non-TANF, $82,183.91, bringing the total month collections for the month of January, $96,805.30. So when we do the 4A collections, that includes the 4A, which is reimbursement to TANF, the TANF program. It also does the funding for the child support. That the figure here, the $14,621.39, it also includes collections for the CPS program, the Child Protective Service program. So last year, we collected, let's see, $33,589 total year collection for CPS that went directly back to CPS. And then we did $223,049.50 to the TANF program. That all went back to the TANF program. And the non-4A collections were $1,269,731.26 that was distributed to our customers. So the 4A collections do include funding that goes back to the CPS that reimburse the maintenance for child welfare.
On the TANF program, I know there was conversation across the state pretty much to deplete those funds, to expend them, and certainly right now they sit at the county, as if you will, accessible. Do you have any updates on what is happening on that discussion? Because I know it's getting pretty heated. I was at a meeting last Friday where, this is the talk of the day.
So, are you speaking to the TANF reserve?
Yes.
That we have? Okay.
Yes.
So the TANF reserve is actually separate from the child support component.
Okay.
So the state has a TANF reserve at the state level. Then each of the counties has a TANF reserve. That TANF reserve is funding that's left over from the Colorado Works program specifically and CCAP. Now, primarily we've always been overspent on our CCAP, but anything left over from Colorado Works rolls into that. Our county is capped at $366,000 and some change. Now, those funds can be utilized, say we have a forest fire and Mrs. Chavez is emergency manager and you all declare a state of emergency. If we have to stabilize the community, that's where those dollars from the TANF reserve can be used. The state discussion has been that because a lot of counties are sitting at capped capacity and very few are using those TANF dollars to balance out the state, they're looking at retracting those funds back to the state level, which is a huge issue for us because as a community, if we do have, and again, 366,000 doesn't seem like a lot, but in the scheme of things, we have an unforsaken fire up in Santa Fe Trail, and those folks are without their home. We can use those funds to put them up in hotels temporarily until we find more permanent lodging for them. If they're without food or resources, we can provide that through those tenant dollars. So that's specifically where we would look at wanting to retain those tenants. Now, at the state level, I've heard no more since the last board meeting when we kind of discussed this, whether or not the state was still in discussion of pulling those back. So I am not updated on that, but that specifically is where that tenant funding comes from.
What is the state total reserve that they're looking at statewide?
I honestly, Commissioner, do not have a total for the state reserve because that fluctuates. So the way that Colorado works with the TANF dollars happens is that at the end of the year with settlement accounting at the state level in June, when we roll into July for the new fiscal year, the state looks at the state reserve balance of TANF dollars. If for some reason that state reserve is under where it should be to balance out, then they look at how many counties are capped at their TANF reserve and how much of that excess Colorado Works money can we put back into the state TANF reserve. So that's why if we don't spend that money in any capacity, whatever we didn't spend Colorado Works automatically goes back to the state to help balance out that state reserve. But I believe the state TANF reserve is so overspent right now that that's why they're looking at pulling back those funds to the state level.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And the collections that we have stay within the county. Should reimburse the state and the county. So they stay within the county. So, any other questions?
Questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Aragon.
Next up, we have Mrs. Kendall with Child Welfare.
Next month, I promise.
That's not their fault this time. Construction delays.
Construction, trying to get stuff in, it's been a headache for it down there. So, I just wanted to talk briefly about the hotline service that we have. I know every year we sign a contract with the hotline, but maybe just talk briefly about what that process looks like and how helpful it has been for us.
That's with the Hunt.
So it's in Lamar.
Lamar.
Yeah, it's at the call center in Lamar. And as Mr. Aragon pointed out earlier, we do have it set up on our phone lines now, which has also been very helpful, so that automatically it gets sent to that 844 number. So we were one of the first counties to actually sign a contract with them when it started in 2013. And since then, I think more counties throughout the state are doing that because they see how efficient it is and how much time it allows the workers to not have to spend time on a call. To have a really good referral come in, it takes anywhere from 40 minutes to 50 minutes for a call. And so I figured out, so far in March, we've had 25 referrals come in that the hotline has taken. So I figured it out. I'm not a mathematician, but I'm thinking it's right around 20 hours of time that they have spent, a minimum of 20 hours, depending on the length of the call. But they sit and they have somebody there 24/7, and when I was on call in the middle of the night and you get a phone call, your mind is not thinking like, I have to ask all these specific questions. And so I think a lot of times what was happening is we weren't getting a lot of information on those when we were taking them ourselves. So they have somebody that's actually sitting there, it pulls up on the screen. If it's an abuse report, this is the questions they need to ask. If it's a neglect, this is the questions that need to be asked. So it's been super helpful, especially now that we're short-staffed. I mean, you figure there was only 2 caseworkers available last week, myself and another one. The majority of the time, there's no way that we'd have had 20 hours to take referrals and do a good job with that.
So this service is an intake assessment
Right. And
evaluation for you guys, and then they send it to
right. So they take all the information And then they have an hour to respond to get us that information. And we have it set up where during the normal working hours, it comes across to my email, and then we have a hotline phone, and it'll send like a little text message, and it'll provide the referral number. And so the hotline worker that's in my office during the day will get that immediately. They'll be able to pull it up into our trail system. They read it, and then they'll respond to me and say, hey, we just got this call that came through. It's something that we need to red team to make that decision if we need to respond to it or not.
But you already have a summary of what the phone call and phone call.
Yes, and so really the only thing that our hotline worker has to do is search our trail system to see if the family's receiving services here. We do a court check, we do a sex offenders check on all of them before we send a worker out.
And so when you're speaking of a red team, it's your team coming together to make a decision upon that recommendation.
Right. And we also have adult services sit in on that team as well because they have to red team their adult protection calls. And on occasion, we're lucky enough to have our Colorado Works sometimes staff sit in on those, which is really helpful when they do. So it's a great system, and like I said, I know we were one of the first counties, and I think a lot of counties didn't want that, but they see how much time it saves and how much better of information we're getting on those referrals, and that helps me as a supervisor make good decisions on if we're going to accept it or not.
Is that managed by Broward County?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, we have two statewide systems that are now in Traverse County. So we have the call center, which is the hotline for child welfare. And from time to time, we do get, I mean, it's rare, but we do get adult protective service calls through there. Those are much more rare. Our adult protection usually get direct calls to their office for referrals. But also the return mail center for our economic security and maintenance department. So we have our staff process redeterminations or applications, and we send information out to the client from the state level. Oftentimes, if the address is no good, or we can't find that client, or the address is just not somewhere that we can get to, we were getting all the return mail, and we were required to process that. It's an extensive amount of time. And so what the state did was, Powers County was the pilot for the return mail center. And so now all of that mail is funneled to them, and they process the return mail to try and reach out to the clients for us. So both of those services statewide are now in Powers.
Commissioner Andrade,
Job creation.
Had I been here earlier, I would have probably bid for the return mail center here.
There will be, I think that this DHS is involved with so much with services that who knows what's coming on the horizon.
It is a lot, and it's very extensive. And this is just scratching the very, very top of the surface of what these folks go through. And
As one of the users of the Trails program software system, and I attended a couple of meetings on there, a conversation and dialogue going on that perhaps the system needs to receive an injection of funds to revamp it, to fix it. As we briefly touch base on it, my recommendation to this whole thing, as I'm the last person to make any comments on it, because you all are the end users. What would you like to see on that? And as I have an opportunity to relay those messages, they seem to really go a long way when we get it from the director's report and from the end users. Is Trails something that we need to spend another $10 million, I don't know, whatever amount of dollars to revamp?
In my opinion, yes. I mean, I don't know if it's 10 million, but it needs to be redone. And I don't like change. I thought the old trails worked fine. I really did. It covered what we needed to be covered. But now, like I said earlier, we're toggling between two systems. And so you get into one, if I have to get in and approve something, it flips me over to the new system, and then I have to log in. And then by the time I get back to the second thing I have to approve, I have to re-log in again. And the time is, you lose that time with all that. So if they would have just kept going with the new trails and finish that, maybe we'd be okay. But it's a mess.
So if I can just inject on that, Commissioners, and I don't want to kind of overword this, but when I came on board in 2020, there was a process in place to update the trails system at that time. The state had approved funding and an entire team to rebuild trails, which is now Trails Mod, which our traditional was Trails Legacy. Yeah. Halfway through that new build, they ran out of funding. And so instead of reverting to the old system until the new system was ready, the state said, well, you're going to use half of Trails Mod and half of Trails Legacy working. And so that's what Mrs. Kendall is referring to in the sense of having to log into two separate systems constantly to do their work. It is very time consuming for staff to manage those two systems.
I don't think they ran out of money. I think that's when Polis used that money to
part of it was pulled back. Yeah, part of it was pulled back to stabilize, and then there was part that they just didn't budget in for completely. And so that's why we lost the funding to finish that. And so that has been in hiatus for 2 years now at this point.
So from your group, the directors group, is there a resolution to this whole dilemma? Because, you know, we heard that, and then, quite honestly, it took me going home and reading. I'm sitting there, what are these people talking about? You know, because I don't use the system. But then as the conversation ensued, you know, my comment at the end is and has been and will be, we need to hear from the directors group, because many times we're getting ready to take a vote, and the question is always going to be, what are they telling us to do? So we can follow your recommendation and support that.
And one of the things that I had made mention to the Colorado Human Services Directors Association, or CHSDA, which we are a member of, and I believe 62 of the 64 counties are under, is that there does need to be more concise and better communication from that representation and the department directors across the state with concerns and issues to CCI and to the local commissioners to understand what the barriers that we're facing are. Many of our systems that all these staff work in have gone through upgrades, but part of the main concern is that they still individually have to log into all of these systems separately. You know, in this day and age, there should be a point of entry where, you know, Mrs. Garrison's team should be able to log into one and should open their email, and should open all of the systems they're working in. You know, and now we've gone to a two-factor authentication process for many of those systems, which means that not only are they delayed in logging in, but then they have to wait for a code to come down through a text message or through a token in order to even log into those systems. So it's very time-consuming for our staff to get into systems. And to be perfectly honest, with a lot of the state and legislative mandates on programs, that's increased time in workload as well. Mrs. Ringo's department, specifically with single entry point, has gone through massive changes in 2 years with single entry point services. And because of Medicaid services now and the requirements for that, where we could put services for a client in place for home care for HCBS service waiver services, I don't know, 30 to 60 days, now it's taking 90 to 120 days.
So question, as president of CCI, is there something you or this board can implement at the summer conference, spearheaded by you and the fellow directors and on this Trails program, so we get the ball moving to get it back on track? Or what do you recommend for us to assist you to get this prepared?
I think the biggest concern is that the directors try to work with the state in partnership, but I think oftentimes what we get feedback from the state is we just don't have that, or we can't meet that need, and so if we're as directors holding those banners and tooting those horns, but we're getting complete pushback at the state level, we're not getting anywhere. And so I think a collaboration between CCI and the departments throughout the state that are having those concerns, and where can we support the state as partners to get those balls rolling again, I think that's the main thing.
It's just, from what I'm hearing, it's just simply identifying the issue and repairing the systems so that one, consolidate.
Correct.
So how do we get that moving? So basically, you're going to need our help. I think
the right hand and the left hand are not communicating, and that's the problem. And I think as the directors in the right hand are trying to get that information up, for the left hand, you know, we don't necessarily get all the information from the state on what the dire straits are for them. We don't necessarily understand all of the concerns that they're having in implementing those types of changes in services. And so it's difficult because we as directors go and we advocate for our teams and for our staff, but then we get that pushback.
You know, let me, Commissioner Lopez makes a very good point. Let me reach out to the chair, which is Janet Logan from Mesa County, and then Wendy Blackson and Andrade from Parks County. Let me see if we have not finished the agenda for the summer conference. And then we would like to have somebody there from the state as well as from the director side. So we can have the open discussion and dialogue, because, you know, there is so many bits and pieces, and quite honestly, I'm as I said, at least qualified to make any comments on, well, go ahead and do this. Well, I don't know what that means. So I will send out an email to
On this side of the desk, though, for commissioners, our oversight is your funding and the manipulation of that funding and how you spend it efficiently. If this is causing money because of the system, you said it a few times, it takes a long time to get this stuff to go back. We probably need to see a financial breakdown of what excess revenues are being expended on this program, where they were streamlined and together how much we could save, because that would help us sell that to the state level. And you know, when it comes to dollars, that's what we have to really look at the bottom line.
I mean, you know, and realistically, I think at the state level, at the local level, it does boil down to the money. That's what it really boils down to. You know, there are certain cases though where, and I know, Commissioner, in the packet that I sent out, you had commented back about overtime. Specifically, I think it was in Ms. Ringo's department. I will tell you that, one, short staffing absolutely is a concern, but I will tell you also that in Ms. Garrison's unit with Medicaid and determination of those long-term care services, I spoke to the board, I don't know, a year ago or more, about the Medicaid fraud statewide and the concern from the federal government regarding Colorado Medicaid programming and how that fraud rate was impacted. We were sitting at around 32% at that time. That Medicaid fraud rate had to be under 3% statewide for us to continue to maintain the Medicaid program in Colorado. That's a huge number to draw down. With that came, under eligibility and determination, many things that in the past clients were not required to turn in as resources to identify whether they were Medicaid eligible. It made getting on Medicaid much more difficult. It also made paying providers much more difficult, which also means that local providers also then say, as doctors or physicians, I don't want to deal with Medicaid. I'm removing that as part of my service, which now gives us the issue that Ms. Ringo's fallen into. I mean, it's just a snowball effect.
Yeah, and you know, and when I went through the report and I inserted those comments, and my perspective is how can we help through the staffing data? Because, you know, one of the things that we heard last week at CWAC is obviously is the burnout factor. And I think all these little things are contributors to having you to spend more time. And then, but at the end of the day, not only does it translate to financial impact in the county, but it translates in delay of services to our population, which it has a double negative impact.
I will say this in open session and open record. Part of the problem is, though, at this level, I think a lot of directors get in because they've been in human services for some time, but there's a lack of skill set and understanding how a business functions, how to look at your internal operations, and where do you have to continually modify. You're continually running SWOT analysis on your departments to identify what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, where are their opportunities, and what are the threats. And I think a lot of times the maximization of the dollar doesn't happen because those directors and those folks running those departments struggle to understand where they need to make the changes. And so it's sailing on the same course that we've been on for years. So we also have to internally look at the local level, where does that problem exist? I am not by any means perfect at doing that, but with my background in doing that and running businesses for as long as I have, if you're not looking at those internal operations, and these guys will be the first to tell you, we've made more changes to this department in 2 years and are continually modifying the way we do business every day to meet the need of the client and to maximize that dollar as best as possible. But at the local level, if counties are not capable of doing that in their departments, we're going to continue to underutilize those dollars.
Sure, you know, and the responsibility is a good friend of mine just retired from Denver. He's going to be missed because he spent so many years in there, but the burnout impact just reporting and maintaining, and that's why I think, you know, living back on us to the extent that we can, and supporting your initiatives and your recommendations is where we need to be.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I think it's so vitally important, not only that in the supervisor's presentations to you today, but also kind of what we've discussed in the past is that there's that open line of communication about those concerns continually outside of the board meeting so that you guys are abreast, because sometimes those come down so quickly and the state's ready to move on something and we're notified the day of about those potential changes. It makes it really difficult when the state's planning on making major changes to funding streams on the last minute and we as directors are not aware of that. And that's an issue.
Good dialogue.
It is. I really appreciate it.
Anything else?
Any other questions?
Okay, and then finally we'll have Mrs. Garrison provide her report today.
So you have your little monthly little sheet that I always get up here and talk about. Well, today I'm going to talk a little bit about SNAP. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program helps low-income households in Colorado purchase food. It provides a monthly benefit that helps families buy the food they need for good health. SNAP is the largest nutritional assistance program in the nation, and the Colorado Department of Human Services is committed to providing the program to those individuals that are eligible in need of this important program. Approximately 1 in 10 Coloradoans struggle with hunger, not always having enough money to buy food, and therefore may struggle in school, experience poor health outcomes, or have difficulty sustaining employment. SNAP helps people afford food, providing eligible individuals with an average benefit per case of $253.99. However, the benefit is underutilized with only 79% participation statewide. For Coloradans, in many rural areas, the participation gap is even more pronounced. Low areas of participation are seen in seniors, working adults, young adults 18 to 29, and non-English speaking populations. SNAP recipients in Colorado are extremely poor, with 79% below the 100% poverty level and 40% below 50 poverty level. The COVID-19 pandemic resulted in severe unemployment rates that hit levels not seen since the Great Depression. In a recent statewide survey by Hunger Free Colorado, approximately 1 in 3 Coloradans reported being food insecure, meaning they lack reliable access to adequate food. So with the department working diligently, we are providing this benefit based on income, resources, and the number of individuals in the household. The members of the household must be a Colorado resident and a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident. There are 4 types of food assistance: expedited, regular, disaster, and transitional. Those who qualify for SNAP include persons who may meet one of the following options. They work for low wages, they're unemployed or work part-time, they receive Colorado Works, Social Security assistance, elderly or disabled, and living on a smaller income with 200% federal poverty level, children, adults ages 18 to 49 who have no children in their home, known as able-bodied adults without dependents. Individuals, couples, and families may qualify if their income is less than 200% of the federal poverty level. So for instance, a household of 1, the gross monthly income is $2,148, and the maximum amount of food stamps they would receive would be $250 a month. The following documents are needed when making an application for SNAP: proof of income, which is 30 days of earned income, self-employment letters and agency letters showing unearned income, such as your Social Security benefits, veterans pensions or benefits, unemployment, child support, alimony, and private pensions. Proof of identity: they must have a Colorado driver's license or a driver's license or state-issued ID, birth certificate, and a Social Security number or school identification for the children. Proof of medical expenses are also used only if they're 60 or disabled. Billing statements, Medicare card, where they have to pay their Part B, mileage or transportation costs to and from medical appointments, and itemized receipts for medical expenses, prescription drugs, or medical supplies. Other documents that may pertain to the case may include immigration, naturalization papers, or child care expenses. Once you submit an application for SNAP benefits, the County Department of Human Services has 30 days to determine the eligibility. If you have less than $100 in cash and less than $150 in monthly earnings, or if your housing expenses exceed your monthly income, you may be eligible for benefits in 7 days. That's the expedited food stamps. You must complete an interview in person or over the phone. If a phone number is provided, the worker will attempt to call the client. If the worker cannot reach the client, a system-generated appointment letter is mailed out to the client. If the client cannot be reached or does not attend the appointment, their expedited benefits are canceled, so they're no longer eligible for expedited, and the application remains pending for 30 days. If the application reaches day 30 and the client has not contacted us or came in to reschedule the appointment, the case will be denied. If the client is interviewed and provides all the verifications required, they are approved for benefits, and then they will be required to recertify in 6 months. They are required to submit their recertification determination paperwork that they receive in the mail, which goes out 45 days prior to the end date for the certification. For some households, their certification is 24 months. Those are the people that are on Social Security. But the certification performed in the 12th month, if the client fails to recertify and 30 days have passed, they are then required to submit a new application. Due to the pandemic, all households right now are currently receiving the maximum amount regardless of income and expenses. And we're anticipating an influx of calls once the PHE ends and the clients go back to their original food benefits. We are currently going month by month and do not have a definite date for the end of the PHE. So right now, food stamps is the biggest thing. And we have to continue to help our clients the best we can. And we're doing the best we can to get them processed within that time frame.
And that dollar amount was doubled for this 2022 fiscal year coming up, right?
Correct.
From what we received, 400,000 a month to 800,000 a month, was that much kind of?
Correct.
So, with the price hike of commodities and foods and services and fuel, are they going to change? Is there any indication of the income levels, of earned income level coming to qualify?
We won't know until they decide, just based on what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis.
And the reason I say that, Chairman, is all of the county employees recently were able to get an increase finally after many years on their salaries. This just alleviates it. I remember at that time, our biggest concern was our own staff who was on entitlement programs. That's why I asked this question, or our staff might have to fall back under these guidelines and be back on these programs.
Well, if they don't increase, if they don't do the increase, I'm sure we're going to have more. I'm actually going to the grocery store myself. You see the increase in the groceries by almost $2 to $4 already. Our gas price is increasing. By the time you take your paycheck, you pay your mortgage, you pay your gas, you pay, you buy your groceries, you're left with almost nothing in your paycheck. So I'm actually afraid of what's in our future and what's going to happen to our county, our clients, and ourselves.
You mentioned in your report that in Colorado or nation, 1 in 10. And do you think that is true also for the San Luis County? Because it almost, with the numbers that we received, it would appear that it's probably higher than that. But again, hypothetical question, but yet it carries a lot of where are we at when we're comparing ourselves to the state or the national level.
I actually believe that a lot of our citizens here have not applied for food stamps. One of the things that we were going to do prior to PAG was actually do some outreach, go out to Kim, go up to Weston, out to Aguilar. We purchased computers to take them out there and actually sit there and actually have the clients come there. So some of the elderly and some of those that can't travel, we reach them.
Yeah, because
That's population, I think, that we're missing here in our county.
And you mentioned that only 76% of those dollars are being used. I mean, basically, we have that 24% being returned back that should be used by our constituents.
And if you would go out on commodity days when they deliver that food, that would be a perfect time to get those numbers that you're looking for.
I think there's other concern with that, especially with our elderly population, and this is when I were talking about that. A lot of times there's still a stigma attached to the SNAP benefits, and I think our older population struggle with procuring those types of services or getting onto those types of programs. They're very cognizant of that. They're very afraid of what that would look like. And so a lot of them shy away from those types of services. But you know, the other issue that we see continually is that, especially with our elderly population, we qualify them for SNAP benefits, but because of the average income, those folks don't qualify for that $250. Oftentimes, those folks are only qualifying for $19, $20 a month in food benefits. So what they do is they end up feeling like, well, what's the use of doing this when I'm only getting $20? And that's unfortunate because there's something broken in the federal system that's part of the problem as to why we're not capturing those populations. That's not something the state can fix. That's not something we can fix. That's something at the federal level that until that legislation is changed and modified in the way that we process those food stamps, that's going to continue.
The only good thing that came out of COVID, in my opinion, was 3 years ago when it really raised its ugly head. What you were saying was a lot of those individuals, the stigma surrounding it, they didn't want to say, I'm in need and I need some help. But because of COVID and they were scared to come in and possibly catch this terrible disease that everybody thought it was in the first 6 months, then okay, we'll take the commodity, we'll do it, we'll come in. And they were so grateful at that point because we didn't have it in Canada at that time, and now we have it, and now they use it regularly, and the numbers are increasing just little bits, but they are increasing. The ones that need it are coming.
And the outreach could also be implemented with our new director of COG as well through our Untitled Chapter program, and those seniors that are attending at the senior centers here in Los Angeles County, and also in the outreach when they do the commodities. The three of us were there for many multiple weeks and a year or two off and on assisting out there and trying to do it right. These people were so thankful to have that commodity service available to them. Now that everything is going high, this is our COVID part 2 of expenditures that are going to cost people. So maybe this program could be implemented or promoted.
And I'll touch a little bit as to what you're speaking of on the opposite end of something that's coming down the pipe too that I think our team has already started to experience, but statewide we're seeing an issue with. So,
and one thing also, there is proposed legislation for the basic cash assistance using the TANF reserves, the state TANF reserves. So we had a pretty discussion on that, increasing that, and you probably know, Michael, exactly the number of it, raising it from, it's a couple $100 a month.
yeah, I can't remember this.
But the whole thing here, that carries a price tag that would be almost unsustainable because the dollar amount in there would be, and I asked the number, and my notes, $140 million, I believe, is what the additional expenditures to the state, but basically the conglomerate of all the counties. But then, of course, we talked about the SNAP program. That is where a lot of the population could actually be walking to the benefit. But I didn't know that here in San Luis County, or is that statewide, 76%?
Statewide.
Wow.
Statewide.
A lot of extra.
It is. Yeah. So, no, this is really good reporting.
Yeah, when I share your concern that $254 doesn't buy but 4 or 5 bags of groceries, I know that, and now because it's double that, I don't know how they're going to do it either.
Well, I think the other concern, I just saw a report this morning where many of the companies, the food producers, are actually shrinking down the size of the product to keep the price at the same, which means now you've got families still spending a high exorbitant amount of money for groceries, but now there's less groceries in that bag. That's a concern too. I mean, and to give you an example, Wheat Thins now dropped their box by 2 ounces, so it used to be a 16-ounce box. Moving forward, it would be a 14-ounce box at the same price.
A gallon of milk is double.
It's scary. I don't know what we have in store for us, but we worry about everybody.
Sure.
It's just-
And our hearts go out to the families, but we also say thank you to your team, because we say it time and time again, as Commissioner Lopez said earlier, the small raise that we gave got lost in this inflationary process, and that's everybody's feeling it at this time. But sincere thank you for all the work. Just good that said.
So following up to that real quick, Commissioner Hassel, you were talking about, the benefits of COVID was folks coming out to start accessing the services. One of the issues that Mrs. Garrison's team is now facing, and several of the directors have had moving forward, is when the public health emergency is finally ended. We talked about briefly the benefit amounts are going to significantly drop for those folks that are under that waiver. So during the pandemic, if you were currently under SNAP benefits, you were provided the max allotment based on your income and the number of folks in your home. So some folks went to a max allotment, a family of one went from $190 to that $250. When that PHE ends, those are going to all drop back down. Those excess funds are going to drop off, which means that we've already seen an influx of irate folks within the community calling. I've had other county directors reach out and ask if we are seeing the same kind of vulgarity in their approach to the loss of those benefits. I sat at a director's meeting for the Southeast region several months ago where we asked the state specifically for language to communicate to our folks about this end of the PHE and how we're going to handle that component. We have not received anything on that. That type of communication really needs to come from the state, because the state is making the determination to extend that PHE and those waivers, and because of that, now our staff will reap the unfortunate benefits of those benefits dropping off. So we are looking at having very upset folks within Los Angeles County when those max allotments fall.
Well, Mr. Herrera, thank you so much. At this point in time, I'll entertain a motion to approve these low tax activity approval.
I move for approval of the caseload accounts by activity approval.
Second.
Commissioner Luis Lopez.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Felix Lopez.
Yes. Item 4B, consideration of core MOU agreement, AHESED Mental Health Services.
Commissioners, in front of you again, we continue to try and expand the provider services that we have for our core therapeutic service program. In front of you is a contract that was brought to you by Mrs. Kendall. Legal has had an opportunity to review this service contract and has made recommendations, and so in front of you is that contract today to extend the services.
This company, KHESE, is that what you say?
Yes.
They are also have a local office here, or was it they're going to be contacting the services here at our offices?
No, they'll be doing, mostly I think what they'll be doing is some telehealth services. If we require them to come down physically, they can, but we don't plan on doing that. Legal, is there anything specific on that?
This is the substance abuse services, right?
Correct.
They have a local office here.
Is it still here? Okay.
Across, right where Jameson's cafe is, in that area, and so that day is designated to us.
Correct.
And they will in-person service us.
Again, on item 3, you see my question on the legendary. This amount due, the $2,925 on the first day of each month. Is that regardless of services provided?
Correct.
Very good.
So they can't increase if we have more clients sent to them, or will it be increased on
I'll leave the legal on that one.
So increase is a possibility if we need to. They're based, this lady is based out of Denver, but she's trying to provide services to rural areas. So they have this provider who's going to different rural areas. So the reason that is paid regardless of use is because he's getting paid for that day. So it's to ensure he gets paid. If we need more services than the allotment that we have for the 1 day a week, we can negotiate the contract a little bit from there. But this is a guarantee that if we don't provide them any clients, which I don't see as a problem, he's still going to be getting for coming more.
So the question, council, do you have any concerns with this contract?
Not as presented to you today, we've gone back and forth with the company a couple of times.
Okay, and I know on a later contract, in case of an arbitration, the venue would be Colorado Springs, and thank you for sending that notification in there. In the event that there would be an arbitration here, council, the venue to arbitrate that would be the San Luis County. Would that be
For this agreement.
very good? Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, I entertain a motion to on this direct.
Make a motion for the core MOU agreement with KHESED Mental Health Services.
Second the motion.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Luis Lopez.
Yes.
Commissioner Felix Lopez.
Yes. Item 4C, consideration of core MOU agreement with Johnson Controls contract fire protection.
Commissioner, I just realized this says MOU for core. This piece is not actually a core agreement. I apologize, I didn't catch that, so you just read that out loud. This agreement is specific to Johnson Controls contract and fire protection. This is regarding our internal fire alarm system and maintenance of that system throughout the year. And so in front of you is an annual contract for us to maintain the fire alarm, the main fire alarm panel, fire alarm battery test, smoke sensor addressable, heat detector, cool station, and audio-visual unit addressable issues and concerns. And we did actually conduct, the fire department did do a full assessment of the building. There were a few housekeeping items, and I did ask Mr. Berlino to provide that report to Mr. Dorcamp, so he had a copy of that. We did pass inspection, so but this was an area that we were not sufficient in, and so we're trying to get this in place to maintain that.
Question, Chairman. Was this, I know it's underneath the bid procurement price of a dollar amount, and this net price is looking at $936. Was this put out to bid, or was it only one contractor?
My understanding from Mr. Berlino, who handles our maintenance, this was a recommendation from the fire department during that walkthrough as an agency to manage that. I believe this is also the agency we've had in the past who installed that system, and so that's why we went back to them on this. If the board would prefer me to put it out for bid, I can.
So this is a proprietary system that was installed and maintained by Johnson Controls.
Correct. That's my understanding from Mr. Berlino, yes.
And is the system still responding to all of the Johnson Controls that were initially installed?
Correct, yes, and so we do from time to time get alerts. Mr. Berlino receives those alerts if there's an issue with the fire system, the fire alarm system. He's the one that receives those alerts and then contacts Johnson Control in order to find out what's going on and maintain that system. But we have not had maintenance on the system itself since occupying the building, and I believe that's been about 4 or 5 years.
And have you contacted maintenance foreman Kenny Bowman and get his thoughts on this?
I honestly don't know if Mr. Berlino contacted Mr. Bowman on that. To be honest, I'm not sure on that one.
Do we have any issues, Mr. Dorncamp, on this type of contract or agreement for annual maintenance? We need to
Procurement may require that Mr. Aragon get at least 2 other quotes, but if it's a proprietary system, if it's a Johnson Control system, I would recommend that the board continues to have Johnson Controls take care of it. We ran into an issue with the HVAC system over there. DHS, where a certain contractor installed it, and then, no disrespect to any of our local contractors, but they may not have the expertise they did in this case So we ended up having to go back to, I think it was either Johnson Controls or another firm out of Colorado Springs to finally take care of that after years of battling that thing. So I would, if they're Johnson Control fire detection system and suppression, I recommend the board stay with Johnson Controls. As a matter of fact, I think they're the same company that's taking a look at the smoky vac system at the Sheriff's Department because of the same reason they're experts in that field.
And there is a section here for repair services and also the system equipment that I'll leave this. This does not include the repairs to be covered on this recommended agreement. However, upon notification by the customer, they will respond to, and then of course it goes on to explain the purchase of this equipment or peripheral devices are limited to, and it will be of the same make and brand of the current system that we have in place.
Yeah, and I will be honest, Commissioners, there are several things with the housekeeping of the fire system that we're going to have to update over the next couple of months outside of this. For instance, I'll give you a prime example. We've been talking with a local signage dealer here. The exit signs that were installed in the DHS building in the jail at the time, the light bulbs that light those, some of them have burnt out. Those light bulbs are no longer available or manufactured, which means we're going to have to replace those signs completely in order to be in compliance with the fire code requirements. So, you know, as we move forward, we're trying to be more mindful about when we're installing things like this or when we're maintaining them. Are they something that we can easily maintain in the future, or are we going to continue to encounter major costs? We're now going to have to replace exit signs throughout the entire building because I can no longer get those light bulbs for that. And so those are the types of things I think that we need to be mindful of as we move forward with things like this, is that we're maintaining them in an appropriate fashion. You know, yes, it's more money, but in the long run, it's going to cost save us because we're not having to call somebody out specifically like the HVAC system where we couldn't find somebody with the expertise on that system. It's cost us a lot of money to get that piece under control.
Council, I was going to ask this, I highlighted this on the terms and conditions, item 16. And we have had this, and I know the funding to cover this expense probably would be county/state. But if there's any federal dollars in there on the COVID-19 vaccination, the company expressly disclaims any requirement, understands or agreement that expresses or implies. And it goes on basically what they're saying that if we are requiring to be COVID-19 vaccinated, I would need a translation from our counselor of that. If we have any federal funds attached to this and or state funds, are we going to run into a complexity of any kind in there?
If you want me to give you legal advice, I'll have to go into executive session.
Okay. Thank you very much. I highlighted that yesterday, and I had a question that I wrote myself here. I just want to make sure that we're all on the right perspective, that we're not going to be walking into. It would be at this point in time, depending on what my fellow commissioners would like, I'd like us to seek legal advice on that.
Move to table.
Second.
Commissioner Luis,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Felix.
Yes. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I'd rather do that.
I don't know, you can see that small.
Well, so Ms. Nelson had to go through that contract with the fine-tooth comb many times, and I don't know how she did it with the print on that. It's very, very small. So,
Yeah. Very good. So,
and again, the next one, Commissioner Monaco, this is a separate contract.
okay. Item 4D, consideration of the memorandum of understanding agreement signed with network.
So Commissioners, as I mentioned earlier in our presentations, that by federal and state mandate, we are required to provide auxiliary services to clients with disabilities. And so in front of you is the Sign Language Network MOU agreement. Ms. Nelson has had an opportunity to review. Commissioner, this is the one that you're referring to, that the venue of jurisdiction would be El Paso County. Mm-hmm. We did request a modification. Unfortunately, the company would not do so. And so the venue would remain in El Paso County. But in front of you is that service agreement to put in place language services as needed.
I've never seen travel rates at per hour, $30 per hour travel rate. I mean, I've seen them in mileage, but I've never seen travel rate that way per hour.
Yeah. And I will say, it's going to be rare that we would actually utilize this service. In the 2 years I've been there, I believe we've had maybe 2 individuals that have come in that were hearing impaired. We've also put in place other options. Again, we're providing whiteboards for communication if we're unable to get a sign language interpreter in place in time. So we have other options to communicate with these clients outside of this, but by state mandate, we are out of compliance in having policies. This is not just locally, this was statewide. Many of the DHSs do not have auxiliary services in place, and so all of the directors are in the position now to put these in place, as well as provide policies to the state regarding that.
I know what he's going to electric vehicles.
You could get half of the home school out here because they most of those kids do time. My daughter's included in the sign language out there.
And we will continue to seek additional resources, but we do have to have these in place within a short amount of time. The state has only given us 30 to 60 days to get all these services in place and the policies out the door.
So, he's got one section here, short notice break, 35 hours, and I think that was part of what the commissioner asked. So, if you get a notification call him, that's even 25 hours, so you can still fall under the, I'm serious, I think this thing is $5 per hour.
Ms. Nelson and I both expressed our concern with the cost. But again, unfortunately, we've serviced through several counties. This is the primary contractor that they use for these services. I wish I could find an alternative that would be substantially financially less, but this is what we're going to have to go with.
And council doesn't have any.
At the end of the day, it's Mr. Lade's opinion whether we can afford this or not, right? And finance.
Any concerns on this?
Financially? I don't know.
No, and again, El Paso, it's not a concern, it's just standard for the contracts that you're used to seeing that I reviewed, and just wondered.
Do they pay us if we go there?
We use his electric car.
Ms. Nelson and I have had several discussions around this contract. It is a little hard to swallow.
There, any more discussion on that? I entertain a motion.
Make the motion to enter the agreement with the sign language network.
Second motion.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Luis Lopez?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes. Item number 5, financial reports, consideration of financials as of January 31st, 2022. Good morning.
So we did have to make an adjustment to the numbers on the sheet because the spreadsheet didn't carry over. Michael didn't notice it's for the year-to-date expenditures, and then our current revenue for the SEP report that we have, the numbers are so small, it's hard to read.
In other words, Ms. Gooley, fix my correction, fix my errors for this morning, so thank you.
We got that.
Okay. So for our current revenue and our year-to-date revenue, we have $1,178,086.71. And for the current expenditures and year-to-date expenditures, we have $1,211,977.78. And for single entry point, our current revenue is $57,078.03. And single entry points, current expenses are $50,681.97. Any questions?
Commissioners, one of the things on this summation report that I want to address and point out, in the future, if you look down under the other revenue areas, Ms. Gooley and I have discussed, we're going to be dividing out, if you'll see there's a line item CSS state incentives, and then there's another one too down that says federal state program incentives. We receive 2 different pots of incentive funding. One is the federal state, that is a pass-through incentive funding. That is not something that the department retains. And then there's an additional state revenue that we do retain. And I believe last year when Ms. Coverly provided our budget, we had a $34,000 projection for those incentives. Mrs. Eklund's actual final of 2021 was $47,000, so we were quite over where we had projected on incentives with their work. So they brought in way more than we anticipated for incentive funding at the end of 2021. But we're going to actually break those specifically out so that you'll understand what is a pass-through, meaning we retain, or did not retain, and then what that is an actual collection for us.
So the making the rate cost recovery would be basically what we end up retaining.
Correct.
Okay, correct. Okay. Any questions? Put the financials out for January 31st, 2022.
Move for approval of the financials as of January 31st, 2022.
Second motion?
Commissioner Luis Lopez?
Yes.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Felix Lopez?
Yes. Item number 5B, consideration of bills for January 2022.
Okay, our bills for January 2022 are $55,637.90. Any questions?
Good job.
Click that in and it zeroes out.
Back to page 1.
Yeah. What format is this? Google Docs? Is that what it is?
I sent you an email when you,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just-
mine's
just
more
a
than
little
five,
while ago.
because I got the email.
So commissioners, that was brought to my attention, and I had actually planned to talk to Ms. Lucero after the meeting today. Because the board packet for DHS with the share report, so you can see your monthly contribution to the MOEs, is so large, it's difficult with the state email to email those out. So I upload that into Google Drive and then share that. It seems like we're having an issue with drawdown. So what I'm going to do, Ms. Lucero, if you're fine, I will send that directly to you. It seems like when you email it, they're able to draw down, and we'll just go that route moving forward.
if it's on a weekend like it was, just send me a text and I'll get on and I'll
I appreciate
done
it.
as soon as possible.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Can we get that on a Friday?
Yes, I was still out of state on Friday, so that's why I ended up coming in Saturday. My apologies.
When I do it at the weekend, I don't take this computer. I got the old one at home, and it's a struggle to open up anything on the thing.
Yeah, it's a pretty big document, so I apologize. Yeah, I don't think we've had a board packet under 180 pages in over a year.
Very good. Did we a motion to approve the bills for January 2022?
Make that motion. Get the bills for January 2022.
Second motion.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Luis Lopez?
Yes.
Commissioner Felix Lopez?
Yes. Item number 6A, consider payroll reports, consideration of payroll for first pay date February 15, 2022.
Okay, payroll from February 15th is $77,950.13.
Any questions? Discussion? We have a motion.
Move for approval of payroll for pay date February 15, 2022.
Second.
Commissioner Luis Lopez?
Yes.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Felix Lopez?
Yes. Item 6B, consideration of payroll for pay date February 28, 2022.
Payroll for February 20 is $81,367.08.
Discussion, questions? Otherwise, I entertain a motion.
So moved. Payroll pay date February 28, 2022.
Second.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Luis Lopez?
Yes.
Commissioner Felix Lopez?
Yes. And thank you so much. Thank you for that information. And I didn't have a problem with Google Docs until right now. It just kicked me out. I think
Maybe
clicked on it and it disappeared. But thank you, Paula, for sending us the email. Thank you once again. Any additional comments, sir?
Not at this time, sir.
Very good. Motion to adjourn this meeting and with recess to go into executive session. Go back to regular meeting.
board meeting. I'll make a motion to adjourn Farmer Human Services meeting and to recess for 10 minutes before coming back into our regular board of county commissioners.
Second motion.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Luis Lopez?
Yes.
Yes. You can download this.